Tim Blankenship here with divorce661.com, and we're here with Patty Handy, who is a financial coach and prior to that, a financial planner and all kinds of different financial things, including mortgage lending. We're going to be doing this as a regular interview, talking about things you need to know. Patty focuses on, and correct me if I'm wrong, Patty, divorced, widowed, and single women,
Yes.
which goes really hand in hand. So I thought it would be good that we get together. We both did, to talk about things. You can talk about things that I don't know about, that I know my potential possible clients may come across and need. And I think I have some things to share for yours as well. Today, we're going to be talking about part of what Patty has to offer as far as her coaching program. We're going to be talking about today 3 core elements to achieve financial peace of mind. We're going to talk about how to improve your score. And I put after divorce. I guess that's not necessarily the case, but I'm sure we could talk about that and why credit score is important. So, Patty, as part of your program, one of the first messages that goes out with your coaching program is you want to talk about 3 core elements to achieve financial peace. And you talked about 3 core elements: commitment, clarity, and confidence. And I thought maybe we could just start there and talk about why was that the first thing you came out the gate with your program, to advise people what they need to do in order to be successful.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Tim. So obviously, after a divorce, things are chaotic emotionally and sometimes physically, mentally, emotionally, and financially, of course. Being righted, if you will, getting back upright. There is a commitment that you've got to give to yourself, and to your, if there's kids involved, you've got to have clarity in like what that looks like, and then the confidence to move forward. So in commitment, I mean in terms of investing in yourself to learn more, taking the time to reach out to those who can help you, a mentor, a guide. Clarity, you need to understand your numbers, where they're at right now. Especially after divorce, you want to have a really good understanding of where you stand with in terms of assets, in terms of debt. Just really understand those numbers. What type of monthly cash flow do you need to continue to pay, the house payments or the rent or whatever it is you've got dealing with. And then the confidence, that kind of comes with the commitment to learning. And that is just really, again, taking the time, asking for referrals of people that that have worked with, whether it's a financial advisor or a financial coach or an attorney, a CPA, whatever it is that you need. Get your team behind you, and make very careful decisions based on having that foundation in place.
Okay, let's drill down on some of these. So the number one was commitment, and I'm looking at some of the information you send out. It says this may sound too direct, but 90% of folks simply either don't take action or quit too easily along the way at the first sign of friction. So in your background in financial planning and financial coaching, what are you seeing clients want to give up, or are you seeing them just not put in the time necessary, hence the commitment to work on their financial piece, if you will, or get their financial affairs in order? What are you seeing there?
Well, it really comes into play more very, recent after a divorce, when there's just so much going on in their world and there's so much chaos in their world. There's a lot of just trauma and grief and emotional things that they're dealing with, that the last thing they're really focused on, or maybe not the last, but not forefront, is the financial piece. They are trying to just deal with the sadness and if they're dealing with raising the kids and all of that piece. So sometimes the financial side of it gets, tossed to the side for a short period of time, because obviously the financial piece cannot be tossed to the side for very long,
Right.
without it being, a unfortunate situation.
So they just become divorced or widowed, and probably, while it is probably one of the most important things they need to deal with, finances and so forth, it's just one more thing that they wish they could put aside and not deal with, I imagine.
Yeah, yeah. It's really, and one of the first things that I have in my program is self-care. Really getting yourself in a place where you can make good decisions. If you are not in a good place, you can't make good financial decisions. And one of the worst things that you can do is jump into something immediately, not being in a good place emotionally, and doing something that will cost you money down the road, or doing something that is, can be just a very expensive situation. So yeah, taking care of yourself, getting yourself surrounded by people who can support you and help you and guide you, and then start to decide, what makes the most sense from a financial perspective, whether it means, where to invest your money, where to, allocate assets, how to diversify your assets, who to trust if you decide to go with a financial advisor. Again, you want to have a team. So the attorneys, the CPAs, the advisors, have them all part of the table that you're dealing with.
Yeah, so I would say, like with my clients, who are the majority are amicable, and they come up with a financial agreement of how they're going to divide their assets and debts. Once the divorce is done, they now essentially, maybe husband, maybe wife, handle the finances and investments, and selected maybe where their money is going in banking. We even have clients where it's still, even though it's a little bit old school, where one spouse totally is in control of the finances and the other spouse has no idea,
Mhm.
what is even going on. Oh, and or we have clients having and operating completely different financial lives, where they don't intermingle their incomes at all, or are aware of what debts are of the other spouse, and so forth. So different things people are doing. But yeah, once they get through that divorce, they're now on their own. And I was just looking at your next statement. Number 2 was clarity. And what stands out to me is it says, people will start googling and researching and trying to figure out, maybe they're trying to learn investments or financial planning, and buying courses, reading every blog post. I guess that's why it's important to have a coach in your corner, where you can kind of keep them in alignment. Or how would you explain that? Just keep them on a path, as opposed to bouncing all over the place with different ideas, because there are different ideas out there as far as how people should handle their finances, especially post divorce.
Yes, those who just go to, Google and online and YouTube and whatnot, there's so much information and there's so much overwhelm, and there's information that is incorrect out there. There's information that is contradictory of each other, and you sort of look at the situation and go, I don't even know who to trust. I don't know who to believe. I don't, this is just too much, and then you don't do anything, and then it's the paralysis by analysis, and it's like I give up. And I do see that as well. So yeah, I mean, online, there's certainly a vast amount of wonderful information out there. It's about sorting through it. And if you can shortcut that by working with a financial coach or a financial advisor, and just filter all that junk out and get right to the root of the issue, it certainly shortcuts your healing, at least from a financial perspective. It shortcuts the and probably less expensive, but it shortcuts that from A to B, if you will, of getting to the other side of this financial situation that you're in.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And number 3, you have confidence. Are you seeing people coming? I mean, I guess that makes sense if I think about it. People coming out of divorce, they didn't handle the finances, suddenly widowed, not having either the financial confidence or literacy, which is different, obviously. But what
Yeah.
what are you seeing, even in your financial planning times before becoming a financial coach? To like, what are you seeing out there? What are people dealing with?
Well, it's funny you said that, because that was one of the reasons why I decided to pivot into financial coaching, is that I had so many conversations, and it was primarily with ladies who were divorced, or had lost their spouse unexpectedly, and they did not manage the money. The husbands managed the money, and for no other reason that it was just, he knew what he was doing and he just did it. And it was like, that's just the way it was. The wife didn't feel like she needed to learn. And even if you're happily married, I'm going to side note here for a moment. If you're happily married and everything is wonderful, I still encourage you to work on the monies together. You both should know where the funds are. I mean, if God forbid the wife does the investing in the money and something happens to her, he needs to know where to find statements, and he needs to know where his, all the investments are. He needs to know what debts are outstanding. He needs, I mean, all of that. You both need to know the full financial picture and make those decisions together as to, okay, where should we, be invested? Do we have enough in safe assets? Is our credit on solid ground? Are we paying down our debts aggressively if there are debts? Does it make sense to, do this or that? And those decisions have to be made together. And that's something I always encourage, having a quarterly money date, going out for dinner and not spending the entire night talking about your money, because that's no fun. But, at least spend a half an hour just talking about things and getting on the same page. And that way, if God forbid something would happen, you wouldn't be completely blindsided by where things are at. But in answer to your first question about the ladies, that yes, typically when they either would come in or current clients, there is a lot of embarrassment, overwhelm. There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of frustration, and there is that lack of confidence. And not to fault anybody, it typically wasn't taught in schools and typically not taught at home. So where were they supposed to, to learn this? So yes, I'm all about the education piece. I'm all about the financial literacy piece. I want to bring that confidence so that if they decide to hire a financial planner, they do have the right questions to ask. And if someone talks about a particular product, they can say, you know what, that's not for me, or tell me more, or whatever the case might be. That they have that knowledge, that they can walk in more confidently into that conversation.
Why do you think that comes out as embarrassment, or I forget what other word you used?
Shame. Yeah.
Shame. Like why is it manifest as that?
That's a great question, Tim. I think it's part of the female makeup. I remember hearing a gentleman speak one time, and he said that men look at investing as a challenge and women look at investing as a threat. And it's just a very interesting concept. And it's just years of having conversations with ladies. I hear this over and over. They just don't like being in that vulnerable position, where I think with men, and somebody might want to hurt me for this, but they're typically, I mean, not typically, I shouldn't say that word, but even if they don't understand the products or investing or whatnot, they may not show that they don't know that. They may not show the vulnerability place of going, you know what, I don't understand this. This is really embarrassing. I don't get this. I don't know what dollar cost averaging is. What does that mean? And a woman's like, oh my God, I must be, why don't I know this? I should know this. And they take it very personally. And it's not anything other than, it's like someone calling me, whatever, because I don't speak Italian. It's like, I don't speak Italian because I don't speak Italian. Something
Yeah.
I don't consider myself, lacking in intelligence because I don't speak Italian. I just never learned it. So it's sort of the same thing. If you don't know this education of the financial side of things, it's no fault to anybody's, but it's great opportunity to start.
Sure. I wonder if that is just a gender or genetic difference in how the mind works between men and women. Because when you said that, a challenge versus,
A threat.
there was, it reminded me that there was a quote, or not a quote, but something I had read that said that, and this was talking about employment, so a little bit off topic, but that men will see a um, job opportunity and see what is required of them, and maybe not have any of the skills, or maybe very few, and look at that as a challenge. Whereas a woman may, and please correct me if I'm wrong, may trying to look at the job requirements and try and align all of their skills with that job. And I can tell you, my daughter's going through that right now, where she's been in a position for 2 years. She's kind of maxed out where she can be. And we're trying to help her look for other employment, but she's trying to align her existing skill set with other jobs. And I said, well, if you do that, you're going to end up right back in the job you have now.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, when I look at these other jobs, yes, I don't have those skills. Maybe I could learn them. And I said, yeah, that's, they will teach you to do that. But then she brought up the wanting, I think she called it imposter syndrome, which was just bizarre to me.
Yeah.
That there's
Very
that
common.
thinking.
Very, very common. Yeah. Well, to your point, I have heard that similar situation where men will look at a job description and the requirements, and even though they don't have those particular skill sets, or some of them, they'll apply anyways. Where women will look at it and go, "Oh gosh, I don't have all of this whole list of items," and they
Yeah.
won't even apply. So it's very common, and I don't know if it's just a society situation. And this is, let me premise this with, um, you know, this isn't a blanket statement for all women or for all men. There's
Sure.
there's women who are, don't know this and are confident, like, hey, you know what, let's just go for it. I'm going to learn this, and don't have this concern. And then there are some men who are like, I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't even want to talk about it. So again, I don't want to, throw it out there that this is not a, every woman, every man. That's obviously
Of
not the
course.
case. Yeah. But yeah, to your daughter's, situation, that is very common. I've heard that so many
Mm.
times, where it's like, okay, if I even have a few of these, I don't have them all, so I'm not going to even apply. Like,
Yeah.
no, 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 no. Go
Such an
for it.
interesting psychology
Yeah,
differences. Yeah.
yeah.
I wanted to ask you, how do I phrase this? How are you able to better help people as a financial coach versus a financial planner?
A financial advisor. As an advisor, I wore the hat of advising on how to invest the funds. Our firm looked at tax strategies. We looked at, tax planning with the CPA involved. We, had portfolios and models that we invested in and whatnot, and did a lot of the rebalancing and did a lot of the mechanics of the money. There wasn't really the education piece that I wanted. So as a coach, there's a couple things at play here. One, a coach, and the definition of a coach, is about working today, moving forward. Okay, so we take our current situation and we help you to get from point A to point B, and progress to where you want to be. In a financial coach position, you are wearing the hat of financial educator, which is, helping you understand, um, the various funds. What do you do with your funds? What do what is diversification? How to best, put your money wherever you want to put it. That's just from the investing side. So, that the conversation of education really wasn't at play as a financial advisor. There was a little bit of that, but most people who come, well, no, I shouldn't say that, because there were clients that didn't have that necessarily comfort level, and they just wanted the advisor to take care of everything. But as a financial coach, I'm more of an educator. There's a lot of life coaching intertwined with that, which is the behavioral side of money, why we do what we do with money, the mindset of our money, and how we're programmed and what we do. There's a lot of information on that in my program, because that's one of the foundational pieces of, where we are today in life, whether it's financial or otherwise. It's what's going on, in our subconscious mind that's playing. It's a, broken tape recorder that we've got to reprogram.
Right. So you can help people from a much broader approach, as opposed from just the financial planning phase. You can handle them from, again, a broader approach, handling the emotional, the psychological, and everything else that goes into that, besides just the financial literacy part.
Yes, absolutely.
Gotcha. So next thing we're going to talk about, Patty, is you talk about how to improve your credit score. And I guess that would be, maybe give us a little bit more on that. Is it like after divorce, after being widowed, or is it just, improving your credit score in general? Then you kind of give some steps that we can talk about.
Well, yes. So knowing your credit and pulling credit should happen whether you're married or divorced or whatever. That's something that you should have a handle on all the time. And even young adults in their 20s should pull their credit and know what their scores are. You can go to annualcreditreport.com once a year, have that pulled for free. It does not ding your credit. It doesn't have any impact on your score. It does not give you your credit score. There's 3 scores. If you want your credit scores, they will charge you a small fee to get your scores. But it is good to do it, especially after divorce, to make sure that everything on the credit report is accurate. Make sure there's no misreported items, that whatever was joint credit is now separate, credit. You don't want to have any more debt together. Side note on that, when you have credit cards that were joint, unfortunately, you have to close those accounts out, And in doing so, you lose the credit history, which is
Mm,
not great because 15% of your credit score is credit history. So if you had a joint credit card for 20 years together, that's all gone. I even called a couple credit card companies just to confirm this. And I did hear, from them, like, yeah, you've got to close the card to have the new card open. I'm like, can't they just transfer the history over? And they're like,
mm.
no, it's got to be closed. And you don't want to have any joint credit card debt. I mean, that can just open up a can of worms down the road, even if it's a very friendly, situation.
Yeah.
I think there's a danger with that.
We have some clients that, for a variety of reasons, are unable to, transfer, open up a new card, and then, absorb some of that debt onto a separate card. In fact, just today I put together a settlement agreement where the agreement is, and they're amicable now, hopefully, and into the future. But there was two debts that they are going to put monies into a joint account for the foreseeable future until these debts that were pretty high are paid in full. Which we're talking probably, I would imagine, based on the balance and how much they're contributing to the payment, probably up to 10 years.
Oh,
And
wow.
I think, while, and I'm sure you would agree, while it's ideal to have a complete financial split and no more real connection, and I'm sure even from an emotional standpoint, not having that financial connection, just maybe be divorced, move on, I have to think about it, as opposed to every month putting money into a joint account and then having to pay on a joint debt. You kind of have that connection. You're just really still not um, totally, separate in that way. Plus there's that issue of potential, maybe someone loses a job or no longer can pay that, down the road.
Yeah, that does get a little bit murky. I don't love that idea,
Yeah.
especially when there's down the road, potential remarriage, and you've got, now another person in the mix, if you will. In a
Why
perfect
are you
world,
sending that money? Yeah, why are you sending that money to
yeah,
that account?
yeah, it's just, I mean, even if you discuss it openly and you say, hey, I've got this obligation, we've agreed upon this, and this is going to go here. At some point, the new spouse might go, gosh, we can use that money here or there, and it just, I don't know, it just feels like it can backfire. But if that's all they have, I mean, if that's all their choices are, and they can't do anything else, then I guess that's what they have to do for now. But I would look at every alternative to see if they can get a type of new credit card and have that balance transferred. And if they have decent credit scores, there's really no reason why they couldn't get that balance transfer done.
In the alternative, and correct me if I'm wrong, if they have, I think, like my wife and I might have a card that's just in my name, and she may just be a authorized user. In those cases, I think we could just cancel that authorization. I think our kids even have some cards. They're not, their credit wasn't pulled. I don't believe they're a borrower on it, but they have an authorized, they're authorized user. Is that accurate?
Yeah, you should be able to just remove the authorized user and keep that credit open as long
Yeah.
as it's not part of that credit card per se.
Right.
Yeah, and then she would lose that credit history on her side, because part of why you have her as an authorized user, especially when a lot of parents add their kids as authorized users, is to help their kids build credit.
Oh,
Um,
I didn't know
so
that adds to that.
yeah, so it helps the kids kind of build credit, but you've got to be mindful that what the kid spends, you're responsible for. So you've got to have some arrangement up front.
Sure. That is, you just reminded me. I remember we had moved a bunch of money over to one credit card, like with a zero balance, a couple of years ago, just to take advantage of that. We kind of had a
Mhm.
bunch of little cards. We moved into one for like a balance transfer, and we had our daughter to it. And she calls us one day and says, "Hey, my credit dropped by whatever." And I called the company, and they said, whoever she spoke to, and they said, "Oh, well, you're on this card that has 50% use or something that was thrown." She says, "I'll remove me off of that. You're ruining my credit."
Yeah, your utilization ratio. If it goes above 30%, your scores start to drop. So
I just realized, we're talking about improve your credit, but this is a whole, there's a whole lot we could talk about that goes into that, just on the credit card issue, and like you said, utilization and closing cards. And one thing I think our clients are not aware of is when they have an agreement, say they're going to maintain a card together and pay it off, like I was referencing earlier. That even if we say so, in some cases, let's say they say they're going to contribute to the debt and pay it. That's one thing. But where maybe a card is in both their names, and in the settlement agreement we say, petitioner or wife or husband's going to keep all of that debt even though it's in both their names. One thing I have to explain is like on a title of a home or on the loan on a home, keep in mind that you may have a settlement agreement that says you are responsible for this debt. That only applies as far as family court orders. It doesn't. You can't send that court order to the credit card company and say I'm off the hook if it defaults because you signed an agreement to pay them back.
Yeah, yeah. It,
That
Yeah. So I cut out for a minute there, but yeah. So to your point, when I was doing mortgages, if the husband and wife were on the loan and in the agreement they said, you know what, the wife's going to stay in the house and she's responsible for the mortgage payment, but they don't want to refinance it because the rate was really low, so he's going to stay on the loan. If he wants to go buy a new house, that loan is still on his credit, so she has to prove he has to prove, they have to prove that she's making those payments. So we needed back in the day when I was there, I'm not sure what the guidelines are now, but we needed to have like 1 year's worth of canceled checks showing that the money was coming out of her account and that she was responsible for it, to take that debt off of his, debt, even though he's technically on that loan.
So there are ways around that if people get stuck with that. Because
Yeah.
we've had people say husband or wife will have 1, 2, 5 years, whatever the case is, to get in a financial position to be able to refinance the house and remove, the spouse off the mortgage through a refinance. And where if that doesn't happen or it's not possible, or even during that time, they're going to run into that problem where it's still going to be reflective on their report, on their credit
Right.
report.
Right.
Yeah.
And like I said, if he wants to go buy a house, assuming she's the one that stays and he wants to go buy a new house, he's got to qualify for both payments or show that she's making those payments. And that's where it gets a little bit tricky. And that gets a little bit trickier when it's a recent divorce because there isn't the history of her paying.
Right. Now it makes sense. So one thing I thought was interesting, and you had pull your credit, discover how to improve it. We talked about that a little bit, and maybe we can talk about that even more in future shows, maybe just even a single episode all on about that.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing you commented, that one of the last thing you advise is to freeze your credit. How do you go about doing that? And why would you do that?
Yeah, great question. So freezing your credit, people think that if I freeze my credit, then I can't use my credit cards anymore, and that's not true. So freezing your credit basically helps prevent people from opening up new credit in your name. So it isn't a end all be all to identity theft issues, but it kind of helps curb that potential issue. So in order to freeze your credit, you would simply go to each credit bureau. So you've got TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion, and you go online. On the homepage? It says freeze your credit. It's super user friendly. You just basically you freeze it. You can freeze it for a different time, or you can freeze it for 1 week. You can freeze it for whatever you want, and then they give you a PIN number. And I encourage you to print that out and keep it somewhere super safe, because the only way to unfreeze your credit is to have that PIN number and put that in. Otherwise, you've got to go through all kinds of hoops with them to unfreeze the credit. And you have to unfreeze your credit if you're going to apply for a home, or you want to buy a car and they need to pull your credit, or you're opening up a new credit card. Everyone's going to want to pull your credit. And they can't if your credit's frozen. So I have my credit frozen, and I did a refinance a couple of years ago and totally forgot to unfreeze it. And they called me. I'm like, oh, sorry, I'll unfreeze it. Let me jump in. And I did it. And they were able to, run my credit. But it basically helps eliminate someone opening up credit cards in your name. It's super easy to do. It's just an extra precautionary method. And your existing open cards, you can use openly and freely like you do now. It doesn't freeze your ability to use your credit.
How is that as opposed to some of these fraud protection companies that are out there? Does that make that unnecessary?
No, you still, that's really more identity theft, like the life locks or whatever those are called.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, it's a complimentary service. This really is just, stopping somebody from opening up new credit. Doesn't prevent identity theft.
I see.
So the other stuff is really focused more on identity theft, and it's a little bit a deeper protection. Um, if you're a AAA member, there is a level AAA you can do for free where they monitor your credit for you.
Oh,
And then there's another layer that if you pay, I'm not sure what it is a month, but they will do a deeper dive in terms of your identity, protection. My Discover card every month will tell me, um, no inquiries, there's nothing unusual happening on your cards, everything's good. And that's free. That's just part of me having a
okay.
Discover card. So there's other ways that you can manage and watch your credit, but those other services are really kind of a step above, and they do some deeper dives into really identity theft. And unfortunately, it's a big thing right now, identity theft.
Yeah, how do you feel about? I guess it's too late after the fact. I have an app. I forget what the service is called, where you can check your credit. It doesn't give you your credit score, but it'll say, "Hey, your score is going up. It's going down." I think it's free, but you also have some paid versions as well. But I guess once you see something on there and that's what's happened to me. I've seen something on there. I'm like, what is that? And it's some weird name, and I'll try and Google it to figure out what it is. And usually it's related to when you some type of credit pull that maybe for a home or a credit card, just not matching the company that that you applied through, because maybe they went through a third party
Mhm.
service to do that.
Yeah, that does happen. As long as you're mindful of, oh yes, I did recently open up a new card, or I did recently have my credit,
Yeah,
pulled. If the dates and times line up, then you're most likely fine with it. But it is good to
yeah,
keep your eye on it for sure. And that's why I said, pulling your credit report once a year too is just that gives you the breakdown of everything,
yeah.
your balances and the whole 9 yards. And a lot of times, I'll add this. Um, there were many times where there were items of collection on a report that the individual had no idea was on there. They had no clue that there was, and it's usually medical, like medical bills came in the mail. They
Yeah.
figured, oh, the insurance company paid it and they didn't pay it, or they never saw
Mm,
it, or whatever. And then you don't pay your medical bills, and guess what? It goes to collection, and suddenly your scores go in the toilet. And
yeah.
so yeah, and so you've got to be on your game with that. You don't want to be dealing with trying to fix all that and unwinding all that when you're trying to buy a house, right?
Mm,
That's like the last thing you want to be dealing with.
clearing all that up. Yeah,
Yeah, and you won't have time necessarily to do all that, while you're in escrow. That just won't happen.
for sure. Makes sense. Well, Patty, we talked about the three core elements to achieve financial peace of mind: commitment, clarity, confidence, how to improve your credit score, pulling your credit, discover how to improve it, and freeze your credit to protect it. Anything else we want to discuss before we end off here?
No, just like the comment that you made earlier about the credit. That's a very big subject. It's a lot to unpack. There's a
Yeah.
lot of pieces to that, and yeah, one of my modules in my program unpacks that entirely. And
Oh,
yeah, it's all about understanding the credits. And unfortunately, there's a lot of things online. A lot of myths out there, like, oh, you should do this to get your score up, or don't do this. And there's a lot of bad information out there. So it's
yeah.
important to do the right things to keep, on your game. And if you have a good score, it can save you tens of thousands of dollars over time by having better interest rates on whether it be a house, a car, credit cards. And if you
Makes
have a
sense.
bad credit score, it can cost you tens of thousands of dollars. So you really should be on your game when it comes to that.
Yeah. Hey, Patty, how can people get a hold of you if they want to learn more about your coaching program?
So my website is just pattyhandy.com. So Patty with the I, Handy with the Y, PATTIHANDY.com. Then you can click on the Minding Her Money link, and that will take you to the roadmap that I cover in the program. And then they can book a call with me, and I have a conversation with them and kind of see where they're at and see if it's a good fit. And they can see an overview of what we cover within the program and what that looks like.
Sounds good. And we'll be digging into other areas of your coaching and different things that relate to divorce and single and widowed women, related to finances and everything in between. So it's good talking to you today, and we'll be doing this again every week, hopefully, and tackling all of these issues so we can hopefully get the right information to the people that need it.
Sounds great. Thanks, Tim.
All right, Patty, we'll talk to you soon.